Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand, and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. Right, so you've made the big move to sunny Spain. You've landed. You've seen the beautiful weather, you've tasted the lovely food, and you're really, really excited to be here. But then out of nowhere, that little voice creeps in. You're really missing home. Maybe it's something as simple as not having a chat with your neighbour over the garden fence, or being able to grab coffee in your local coffee shop. Maybe it's wondering why the other mums in the park don't quite talk the way you do. I remember feeling these exact same thoughts, and I remember feeling this exact same way when I first moved here with my two little ones back in 2016. And you know what? Homesickness is not a sign that you've made the wrong choice, actually. It's genuinely part of the process, and it's a normal part of the process that you will have to work through. So I'm here to tell you today that it's totally normal. I've gone through it. Everybody I know that has made the move has gone through it, and I'm going to share exactly with you how I managed it so that you can do the same thing as well. I'll tell you, I remember standing in the park with my kids running off to their new Spanish friends. I used to dread these play dates in the early days, by the way. Why? Because all the other mums could chat away in Spanish, and I felt really like a fish out of water. I didn't have enough Spanish at that point. To be honest, I felt very uncomfortable, and I would usually try to avoid these type of situations as much as I could in the beginning, because I felt like the conversation level that I had could only get me so far, and I just felt really uncomfortable. So there I was with my two little toddlers, feeling super foreign in a place that was supposed to be my new home, and I could hear everybody laughing, joking, talking about their kids, and I just couldn't join in. I really missed the comfort of being able to chat easily with other mums back in Ireland, where everything just clicked, where everything just felt so normal, and we all had the same sense of humour. So before we really dive into today's episode, today's Spanish word of the day is tranquilidad. And this is the Spanish word for calm or peace. You'll often hear, well, the kids will often say to me, "Mom, tranquilo, just calm down," especially when I'm angry or annoyed with them for not cleaning their room. But you know what? Back in 2016, I needed a little bit of tranquilo back then, just to help me with those moments where I really felt like a fish out of water. I needed that calm just to keep me going. And trust me, you'll need that little bit of calm too, to keep your head in the game when you're adjusting to this new life. And that's totally okay. Do you know what? When I first moved here, I was really excited. I really, really was. The thought of starting afresh in a beautiful new country with my kids, that new life that we had been planning for so long, seeing that come to reality, you know, it was such an exciting time, and I really was full of enthusiasm to really take this new step in our life. But nothing quite prepared me for how it felt to not really know anyone, not really to have my old support system around me. And I remember feeling quite isolated, not having that network around me, especially as a mum. I missed the familiarity of sitting down with my Irish neighbours and friends. And I didn't have that in Spain at first. I didn't know how to join in. It wasn't that people weren't friendly. You know, on the contrary, everybody was so friendly, you know, full of chat, wanted to, you know, learn about us. The other mums that my kids were socialising with wanted to interact with me. It was just that I wasn't ready yet. Everything was different. The language was different. The cultural nuances were different. for God's sake, the times of eating your lunch were different. You know, I was used to coming from a place where I ate my lunch at 12:30, 1 o'clock. Well, you know, that's super foreign because in Spain, they eat lunch quite late. So it's common to sit down and have your lunch between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So, you know, everything was just different. It was a tough pill to swallow, and it was probably something that during the mental planning and prep for our big moves, that so something that I probably overlooked a little bit, you know, those cultural nuances, those slight differences that when you are feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, they can just make that homesickness just sink in a little bit more than you can anticipate. I remember thinking, you know, how do I join in with these other mums? Everybody was speaking Spanish and I just felt really left out, really uncomfortable. But I'll tell you what, those first few months were hard. It wasn't just the language, it was missing those small, simple moments of home. It was the comfort of knowing who you could talk to, the chats in the grocery shop, the chats at the coffee shop, grabbing coffee with friends and other mums, the things that really made you feel like you belonged, the chats as you dropped your kids off to nursery or school in the morning. I just wasn't there yet. And, you know, at the start that felt really, really hard. I remember in our first summer, in the house that we were living in at the time, I remember the kids, you know, they were speaking, well, Abigail was quite young, so Oliver would have been speaking Spanish at that point. He would have completed, you know, his first term in school, but not to the level, obviously, that he's at now. And I just remember, like, my heart breaking because they were different. They weren't really in a position to integrate with the other kids in the neighbourhood who had known each other for a very long period of time. They were probably in the same clubs, school classes, everything. We were just different. And I remember really feeling that at the start, but really feeling it for the kids as well. They felt quite left out. But you know what? A lot of that was just prepared, possibly what I was projecting as well. The homesickness that I was feeling at that time, that unfamiliarity that I would have felt back in the day. But you know what? That all changed. And one day I was at the park with the kids, at the swing park, which we do all the time in Spain when the kids are little. And one of the mums just smiled and said, hola. And I remember being just a little bit taken aback because on reflection, if I think about my own behaviour at the time, I was probably just running into the park, you know, eyes to the ground, don't make eye contact with anyone. Please nobody talk to me. You know, my 15 sentences of Spanish are not advanced enough to be able to carry me through a discussion that you're going to want to have with me. And, you know, I was probably coming across quite standoffish and like isolated, wanting to isolate myself from people. But, you know, on the contrary, that just wasn't how I was feeling on the inside. I just was feeling very unconfident, very insecure that my level of Spanish at that point was not going to be able to carry me to a conversation with another mum. But you know what? The ice was broken. We started chatting in broken sentences and that felt like a lifeline. And slowly I was building a network and a new kinds of connections. And that first instance, that first hola in the park, that was all I needed to then quickly click me out of my own head cage that I was probably putting myself in at that period of time, to give me the confidence to realise, actually, if I approach this a little bit more open-mindedly, the whole situation can potentially be different. Let's talk about homesickness. Do you know, I'm glad we're talking about this today because I'm not actually going to sugarcoat it. It hurts. It stings. It exists. And it's very natural that it will occur. Not necessarily in the early days of your move, because you're busy with everything. You're busy with setting up your new home. You're busy with integrating your kids into new schools. You're busy integrating into communities. You're probably learning the language. You're probably going to Spanish classes, probably starting a new job, or if you're working from home, establishing a new work routine for you and your family. So at the start, you're busy. Okay. It's after the busyness starts to subside and you start to kind of integrate a little bit more into the mundane and your life starts to feel a little bit more normal that the homesickness can really start to sink in. And that's what it was for me. And I've often heard a lot of our clients in our network talk about that too. At the start, you're so preoccupied that you don't really have time to feel homesick or even think about homesick. fitness, and everything is shiny and new. Everything is different. Everything's fun and exciting. So it's natural at that point that homesickness doesn't really sink in. It's that little bit later on. It's that little bit further down the line. But actually, I found that embracing the homesickness without the guilt really helped. There's no shame in feeling homesick, right? Let's skin the cat here a little bit. Let's slice the elephant. You have made a huge move. You have made probably one of the biggest changes that you're ever going to encounter in your life. Not only have you moved you've probably moved your family, maybe you've moved a pet, maybe you've moved a partner with you. You've moved your life. You've moved everything that was familiar for you. So there's no shame in admitting that you feel a little bit homesick. And there's no guilt around that. And it wasn't about forgetting about home or pretending that I wasn't missing it. I allowed myself to definitely sit in the fields of the homesickness. For me, it was the familiarity of home. I often missed just a joke with an Irish person, just them naturally getting my sense of humour, that sarcasm, that wit, because sometimes those things do get lost in cultural nuances at the beginning. But as you start to get more familiar with the language and how things work, that fun and your confidence to have that fun and make those jokes and express yourself in that way. But I allowed myself to feel it. I make sure that I did things to honour my roots here in Spain. I always celebrated my Irishness. I'd make Irish food at home. There's plenty of Irish bars and restaurants over here, so it would be common that we would go and spend time with other Irish people and eat Irish food in these environments. I'd often bring tastes of home back from Ireland with me. I think everybody knows about my addiction to Ballymaloe relish. I currently have a stock of 6 spare bottles in the pantry in my house. If the Ballymaloe relish runs down, that is a disaster for me and I am not functioning. So every time somebody's travelling over, I ask for my stock of Ballymaloe tomato relish to be stocked up, and I always make sure that I bring it over with me. But that's just something for me. That's just my little taste of home, my reminder of home. And, every time I speak to my family back in Ireland, I reminded myself that we're really only 2.5 hours away on a flight. It's such a short distance. So putting that into perspective for me was also huge. Now let's talk about culture shock, because that's real too. It's super real. You've got all the practical elements of your move, picking up, moving everything, moving your belongings, all of the practical steps. But you will have to immerse yourself in a completely new culture, which can come as a shock. The pace of life in Spain is just different. Things are done differently. Everything slows down. And I'm not just talking about like the siestas, particularly at summertime. It's the small things. People don't rush like they do in Ireland. They really take their time. And I'll tell you, it took me a while to get used to it. It really, really did. It took me a while to get used to the slowing down and the encouragement of being present, because that's so important in Spain. Things are at a slower pace because you are encouraged to enjoy the moment and to enjoy the surroundings and the people around you. And it did take me a while to get used to that. And don't even get me started, as I mentioned, on the 2 p.m. lunches. That was huge for me. It's not just the 2 p.m. lunches, but it's the having your last meal of the day quite late at night. So if you're from the same part of the world as me, you're probably used to having your last meal of the evening around like 6 p.m. when you come in from work. It's dark. You just want to feel warm and cozy. You want to have your dinner and kind of wind down from the evening. Well, in Spain, it's not done like that. So I did mention that we're used to having lunch at 2 p.m., between 2 and 3 p.m. So naturally, your last meal of the day comes later, right? You're not going to sit and have your big meal of the day then at about 6 p.m. if you've just had quite a large lunch at 3 p.m. So it's very common that in Spain, people will sit for their last meal of the day around 9 p.m. And in summertime, that's extended even later to even 9:30, 10 p.m. because it's bloody hot. And people do not want to be eating such a large meal in the heat. So there's differences there around how life is lived on a day-to-day basis that you have to culturally adjust to as well. And at the start, I thought these things were myths. I was like, obviously people eat early. Well, no, they don't. It's very common as a foreigner, if we're going out for dinner in the evening, we still like to maybe go into a restaurant between 7 and 7:30. Well, the restaurant's going to be empty because Spanish people eat much later in the evening. So these are things that you slowly start to adjust to. But slowly I got it, and I really started to appreciate it and enjoy it. And I really started to see the value in slowing down and soaking in the moment and really appreciate that pace of life, because let's be honest, that was a big allure of part of my move. We wanted a different pace of life. We wanted a different way of doing things. So being open-minded to that and adjusting into that was what we wanted. But when faced with it, it did take a little bit of time to adjust to the change. But now I love it, and I'm so grateful for the life and the pace of life here and the learnings associated with that. And let's not get started just on the siesta that Warner has absolutely mastered the art of. He is a siesta pro, just has it down to a fine art. He loves his little siesta. I haven't quite got there yet. I've never really have been somebody who can take a nap in the middle of the day. But my husband, on the other hand, is the siesta advocate. He loves it. He has embraced it. And I understand it, right? Because your day tends to go on a little bit longer here. So for Warner, for example, having that siesta in the middle of the day just means that he has that energy reserve later in the day for when he needs to do viewings and needs to work. So I absolutely get it, but it's just not a cultural nuance that I have personally been able to adapt yet. But you do need to get used to it, because you have to start to build it into your routine, because going to the bank and things like that, they will close for siesta. So you have to start to get used to it in the beginning, that you plan your day around it. And I think that's quite important. Often I would forget. I'd be like, oh, crap, siesta, it's closed. So it's something to bear in mind and start to planning into your days. So that's it for today, guys, on homesickness. The importance of not sugarcoating it. We've talked about culture shock and the challenges of finding your tribe here in Spain. It's not always easy, but it's so worth it. Just take it one day at a time and be kind to yourself, and know that you've got people who've been there. One day at a time is so important in this situation. You cannot run before you walk. And I kind of wish that people had said that to me in the beginning. You can't run before you walk. You have to walk, and you have to take it one day at a time, and just celebrate the small stuff. Celebrate the small stuff. If you're struggling with this, or you need a bit of one-to-one support, I'm here to help you. I offer coaching calls where we can talk through your experience. I help you tackle the homesickness, the culture shock, and just get you feeling more and more at home here in Spain. Feel free to message me if you've got any questions, or check out my website for more details, which will be in the show notes. And I will include more information in there about how I can potentially help you. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. You're creating an amazing and beautiful new life, and I'm right here with you. Adios for now. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves, and of course our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net, or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.